sometimes human, sometimes animal, all conceived with extraordinary imagination and a wealth of expressive detail.
Live more natural lives in their unnatural habitats.
Becoming aware of nature, of natural details, and so forth.
But whenever he can, he has to be ready to investigate the unexpected and unusual, because it may contribute to what he wants to know.
We're talking about the sorts of things that had an impact in as much as they came from one part of the world and journeyed to another and acted in the mode of impact, impulse, influence, and so on.
We want to hinder the man at the wheel, who hurls the lance of his spirit across the earth along the circle of its orbit.
I'd suggest that we should rather look for changing angles of vision.
An inventive tradition which was able to handle with considerable equanimity a long list of wonders.
Welcome!
We are so happy to be back. It's been a very, very long time.
It really has. It's been, about a year now?
Something like that.
To get you up to date, let's talk about what's happened in that year.
Yeah, the big reason, there's been a lot of reasons, but like the big reason why it's taken so long to release a new episode is we've just had so much happening in our lives.
Truthfully. We almost 2 years ago now bought this house, and it's a very, very old farmhouse. We actually learned a few months ago that our house was moved to its current location in the late 1860s. Moved to its location in the 1860s.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a very old house. We've had issues, and
so yeah, we've been doing a lot of like home improvements and things like that in order to just like update everything. I mean, it still has its issues. I still need to do a bunch of fucking electrical work and whatever, but like
living in a house is just a constant project. But also we've been working on some property improvements, which we will add to later.
Also, like, another big thing for us was we both left our old shitty jobs.
Yep, we're gone from the factory. So, bye-bye night shift and hello day shift, real
living the life of a normal human
world. Yes.
Yeah, and honestly, like, it's been a fantastic thing for me, just not only, like, health-wise, but also just mentally. Like, being able to go to sleep when the sun goes down, waking up when the sun comes up, and that kind of thing. Like, especially during this winter and everything, it's really helped out with, like seasonal affective disorder and that kind of thing. Like, being able to get the vitamin D that you need in your body by being up with the sun rather than living in permanent night.
And I think this is going to help us, even working in this administrism paradigm. There has always been a need for night shift people, but we are ready to be these day shift people.
Yeah, we're moving on with a new chapter in our lives. Like, and that's one of the things, like, I've spoken to people, like listeners and everything, who've asked me, when's the next Administrism episode coming out? And a lot of this, like, big change and everything, moving into a new paradigm is just kind of like, you are dredging up things in your life in order to change and transition into this. And so, like, that transition itself is a big thing. And so by transitioning into a big thing, you're going to uproot a lot of things.
Yes, a lot of things have been uprooted. So what else has been going on, Yara?
Well, I mean, we've had, like, just personal and family issues, but we're not going to get into that because it's really neither here nor there. But recently, like, I've kind of taken over with the Faith Blind Council podcast. So, like, I've been doing all of the editing work. I've been, trying to get a hold of people for interviews and stuff like that. That's been, like, a big weight that I've been dealing with. It's nothing I can't handle, but, like, that's just another thing that's happened that we have to work through.
Right. It's just another thing that has kind of put Administrism a little bit on the back burner as far as recording episodes go.
Yep. And then I edited a book, did that for Josh Wetzel, the Toxic Magic book, Ill Thoughts, Ill Words, Ill Deeds. So that was another big chunk of my time.
So we're very sorry that this episode has taken so long to be recorded and released, but we are very thankful that you guys are understanding, and we are looking forward to, continuing to record and track this journey for us, and we hope that you join us.
Definitely. And this is like, with all of these things and with these big changes and all of that, like, we've finally gotten into the swing of things where we can start doing this and start paying attention to our actual practice rather than, prepping the groundwork for beginning that practice. On that note, I would like to first start going through our bibliography, because we did that during the last episode, and it's one thing that I had said that I'm very much wanting to do, is have all of our sources cited to let you know where we're getting our information, what kind of information this is. You can check it out and understand things in the same way that we understood them by reading them. So hopefully that will help out. The first book we have is written by B. Anson. It's called The Miami Indians, Volume 103, The Civilization of the American Indians Series, which was printed in 2000 by the University of Oklahoma Press. The next one was written by W. Arthurson, called Spirit Animals, and that was published in 2012 through Eschia Books. The next one was written by K.H. Basso. It's entitled Wisdom Sits in Places, Landscape and Language Among the Western Apache. First edition, published by the University of New Mexico Press in 1996. Next was written by Bearhart and M. Larkin. In 1998, it was entitled The Wind is My Mother, The Life and Teachings of a Native American Shaman. It's the reprinted edition, and that was printed through Berkeley University. The next two books are Braiding Sweetgrass and Gathering Moss, which were written by R.W. Kimmerer. And I know that Braiding Sweetgrass was published in 2020 and was published through the Milkweed Editions books, I believe. Next was written by L. Mengelkoch and K. Nerburn, published in 1993. It's called Native American Wisdom, published by New World Library, the first edition. And the next one I am going to butcher phenomenally, because I don't speak Miamia, but I'm going to try my best. It's called Miamia Nihi Piwalia Achda Chimuna Nihi Alachsuchana, and that translates to Miamia and Peoria Narratives and Winter Stories. I butchered that to all hell, and I apologize for anyone who does speak Miamia, but I tried. I really did. But that was published by the Miami Tribe of Oklahoma and the Peoria Tribe of Oklahoma in 2021. And then finally, our source is H.R. Schoolcraft and the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs. And that was published in 2015. It's a really, really old series of ethnographies that go back to the 1700s. And this was one of the problems that I had when researching the Miami culture, is the fact that there wasn't a whole lot that was written about their actual practices, except from old ethnographies that were very, very problematic, to say the least. But they were written during a time when these practices were still alive and well. So I had to get what information I could, but it wasn't all great. But yeah, that's those are all of our sources for this episode. And I can't, we didn't write out a script, so I can't really go ahead and tell you what information I got where. Honestly, I'm just going to tell you, go out and read those books. Go read them.
Yeah, they're pretty good reads, and some of them even have audiobooks. So I know both of the books by Robin Wall Kimmerer, they'd be Gathering Moss and Braiding Sweetgrass. Both of those have audiobooks. So if you have a commute or you have time at work or time while you're doing dishes, those are really good books to listen to. And I know that she is the author of those. She's the narrator of those books as well as the author. I think there may have been a few others that were also audiobooks.
The one by Bearheart, which was The Wind Is My Mother, has one. I know that B. Anson's The Miami Indians is an audiobook as well, I believe. And then so is Wisdom Sits in Places by K.H. Basso.
Those are all great to just like listen to, and I'm not sure if the authors are also the narrators with all of them, but
tell you.
For me, it was kind of interesting to hear it from the actual voice of, of the person who is giving this. It felt very personal. So, and that was important to me. All right. Before we go any further, I think we should discuss who the Miamia people were.
Because that was like who we were focusing on.
Right. They were the reason we pretty much started the paradigm. We wanted to know how the people of the land that we inhabit practiced
their daily lives,
right,
really.
How they practiced their daily lives, how they worked with the land to live the most cohesive and with reciprocity with the land.
Yeah.
So who are the Miami, Yara?
The anglicized word is Miami. And this shows up in a lot of different places. So like lots of different names for things like the Miami, or Miami University in Ohio. That's named after the Miami people. But they had different names. They first of all, it translates roughly to the downstream people. However, they also call themselves Miktok, which just translates to the people. And you'll see that a lot in lots of different cultures around the world. They just refer to themselves as the people, or we are us, or we are the ones. It's very kind of like centric on the organization or group of people who they are. And so Miktok translates to the people. So the Miami are the people. But they're known as the downstream people. And there's a big reason for that.
Yeah, the reason for that is the area in which we inhabit is just outside of what we know as Fort Wayne. And we are known locally as the Three Rivers City. We have the St. Joe River, the St. Mary's River, and the Maumee River. Also, the Miamia people, their land stretched to the Wabash River. So they had 4 rivers in their vicinity that, just in this one little small vicinity. They themselves referred to this land as Kikianga. That was their term before
they got colonized.
Before they got colonized, they lived in Kikianga.
But you'll still see the name Kikianga, just like the term Miami, in this area quite a lot. There are lots of there's Kikianga Brewery. There's different Kikianga Street. I
actually grew up on Kikianga Street, so it's just still known, and maybe not known why by most people, but it's still used. Some of the native words are still used within our...
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it used to be, ages ago, there used to be, a Major League Baseball team or, minor league baseball team in this area that was, the Kikianga something, and they were from Fort Wayne. This was back in the, 20s or some shit.
Oh, I have no idea about that. But I know that there are whole neighborhoods that are devoted to... names of the various groups, tribes of the Algonquin people.
Yes.
Which are who, the Miami fall under the Algonquin tribe, family. And the Algonquins settled in this, Great Lakes region of North America. And so I think the Miami may have even traveled all the way up north to the Great Lake.
Yeah, some of them had, like, some of the areas had reached up to the Great Lakes, because Kikionga itself, like what we know as Fort Wayne, before it was colonized and everything, Kikionga was basically like the meeting place. That was where all of the Miami people would come together. You had all of these sporadic different clans and everything that, like, once a year or something like that, they would have a big festival where they all came, or like a big meeting thing or whatever, where they would all come to Kikionga, and you had each clan chief or whatever would come in, and so like once a year they would have like the big tribal chief who was like the chief of the Miami, but the way they did it, like, it was entirely different than how most like colonist people assumed. Like, it was all done on meritocracy. Like, the person who was chosen to be the chief, like, he was chosen because he was the best fit to do it. Like, he was the one who was like, he was the most, like, he was the best public speaker. He was the best person to, like, hang around and help solve problems. Like, it wasn't just, it wasn't just like a king and then the king's son and then the king's son's son. And then right.
It wasn't just like a familial monarchy. It was a meritocracy.
Right. Yeah. And, like, once that person was chosen to be the chief, they remained chief, like, most of their life. And then they passed it on to the next person who had the merit and had the ability to do it. So it wasn't like their children or whatever weren't considered royalty. They were just, like, the children of the current chief.
Yeah. And when you do look into some of the genealogy records, you might see that sometimes the children of the chief are referred to as like princes or princesses, but that's not technically true.
No, that's how,
that's how the white people managed to understand.
Yeah. There are lots of different ways of seeing, like, familial relationships that weren't understood very well by the people who colonized this area. Like, they understood, so, like, another thing is, if you're, like, your cousin, like, your female cousins would also be considered your sisters in the Miami tribe, because they were the children of your sisters or your mother's sister. So they would still be considered your sisters. There was a much different way of approaching familial life amongst the Miami and a lot of Native American or First Nation people than what the European settlers came to understand. And it's because of that you get, like, a lot of mix-up in genealogies.
Right. And I've actually seen some similarities to that in, we have a whole group of friends that have come from the Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and they refer to, like, their mom's sisters as their moms, or, like, all of the older women are their aunties, or I may be, mistaken. I'm not going to try to generalize that to, all countries or regions in Africa, but
at least amongst the ones you've met.
Yeah, at least within the group of, the Congolese people that I've met, they refer to all of the, like, older women as either, mom or auntie. So all of them are moms and aunties. And that seems very similar to what we were reading with the Miamia people.
And so, like, as far as, like, their history goes, back in the 1700s, during, like, there was, like, the Battle of Fort Wayne and things like that, in which they fought for their land in this area, but had ended up losing, and so they were displaced. At first, they were moved to Kansas by the United States government, and then after that, they were moved to Oklahoma, where the officially the government sanctioned and officially recognized tribe currently resides. It's like, as I had mentioned in some of the like bibliography, it's the Miami Miami, Oklahoma Press or something like that. But it's the Miami tribe of Oklahoma is currently the only federally recognized one, despite
there being another Miami Nation of Indiana. They were very, very, very shortly recognized by the government, and then that was very quickly stripped away. So the people that managed to stay in Indiana, some of them formed their own like community with themselves and, you know, created the Miami tribe of Indiana. Yeah, like I said, the U.S. government stripped that away, and they still refuse to grant them governing rights over themselves.
Right, because it's basically like those people who decided to stay after the government was like, okay, you're all moving to Oklahoma, they decided, fuck you, no, this is our land, we're staying. And so the government was just like, fuck you, you don't get federally recognized.
Even though the government did grant certain families land here in Indiana, I actually, through looking through my genealogy, found out that I come from one of those families who managed to stay in Fort Wayne and receive land, and slowly, very, very slowly, that land was just taken away. Whether that be through taxes or oppression of other ways, monetarily.
And then it was, didn't all of your relatives, ancestors, her children and whatnot, they weren't even allowed to be part of the federally recognized tribe until relatively recently.
No, I believe that they managed to get recognized within the Miami tribe of Oklahoma.
I thought it was like there was some court case in like 96 or something where they finally were like, yeah, it's fine, you're okay, I guess.
I can't remember the exact year, but yeah, they had to go through a whole court case to become recognized into the Miami tribe of Oklahoma. But then at that time, all of that person's relatives, as long as they applied for membership, were able to become members. Okay. So, I mean, if I was interested, which I kind of am interested, I could apply for
tribal membership?
For tribal membership, I would just have to go through the whole process of proving birth and death records back to the last family member that was granted membership.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. And it made me feel kind of special in regards to researching this tribe even more. It made me feel even closer to them. It also made me very angry because, like, these people should have never been stripped from their land in the first place. Like, this was their home. They were the original
caretakers, and it's just like, well, fuck you, we want this land now. Why, though? Like,
the whole reason they were stripped from this land was, so a very long time ago, this land used to be known as the Great Black Swamp. So there's, like, a giant, like, triangular shape that
and it goes from like the Miami all the way, or from the Maumee all the way to like Lake Erie.
Yeah, I think it's like Maumee all the way to Lake Erie. There was this giant, beautiful, dense swamp. And then was it the War of 1812?
Yes, I believe
they decided to
drain the whole swamp.
Yep, because it was inhibiting travel.
Yep, and it was inhibiting troop movement.
Right, and so because they drained the whole swamp, they realized, man, this land is super, super fertile because those centuries...
of it being a swampland.
Right, and peat and all of that, swamp growth. So when they realized that this land was so fertile, they kicked the unfortunate tribes out, and... Many died.
Which, and then even in Fort Wayne they had... Because, Fort Wayne is named after, General Anthony Wayne. And there was at one point... Because the Miami of Oklahoma actually do have a spokesperson here in Fort Wayne. And Fort Wayne at one point tried to have like hey, we're going to have an Anthony Wayne Day to celebrate General Anthony Wayne. And the Miami spokesperson was just like, could you fucking not? Because no. It was just so... They ended up not doing it, but because it was just a giant cultural misstep. Like, can we celebrate this person who slaughtered thousands of Native Americans?
Well, I mean, and they have in other ways, like the local basketball team is called the Mad Ants.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's clever. They're ants and they're mad because they're,
right,
trying to win, but they based it off of the name Mad Anthony Wayne. And if you go downtown, you'll see like statues of him and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's
kind of disheartening.
It's almost it's similar to like statues you would see in the South, towards Confederacy. Like, yes, we don't want to lose this this memory of our history so that we cannot treat people like that again, but it's also praising colonialism. And sure, without colonialism, like, I wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be here, but who would still be here?
You're right.
What
but I mean,
still would be here?
Where the fuck are the statues to, like, Chief Little Turtle? Where are the fucking
We have those.
Right, but they're, like, tucked away.
They are tucked away.
Like, where are the statues to, like, like Chief Pecan? Like, where are the statues to, like, Kilsequaw? Like, all Kilsequaw gets is she gets a fucking campground over in, like, Huntington County. That's it.
And I'm thankful that there is a nature preserve, devoted to Kilsequaw. But what else could we be doing to honoring that memory?
Right.
And so, yes, you're right. It's very disheartening to see...
like a giant fucking bronze statue to Anthony Wayne, and then, you have the Miami Village where, Chief Little Turtle originally came from is currently it's a trailer park.
Right. That's along the Forks of the Wabash, right? And that place, it's not exactly easy to get to, I don't think. I mean, it's been quite a while since I've been there, but it's very tucked away, and it's not viewed as
and
like
also
a destination for tourists or anything.
And it's not well kept. It's kind of disheartening, but I mean, what more can we do except, kind of like spread awareness and, do those steps to, like, yeah, let's spend a weekend and go to Forks of the Wabash and go hang out there and go do things and we'll get to this a little later on, but like things that we're doing with our practice that are like, as we focused on Administrism and like developing this based on Indigenous practices, what have we done using those foundations that we started off with that we had mentioned in the last episode? And I think starting off, like, as I'd mentioned, we were setting the groundwork and everything, but we're starting off pretty well.
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good groundwork so far. I mean, it's been slow going, but I think it's good to start slow rather than dive in too deep too quickly without any preparedness.
Mm-hmm. But before we do that, let's finally wrap up who the Miami people were.
To other tribes, here's a interesting, maybe even funny little bit. To other tribes, they were known as the naked people. In the summertime, or as long as it was warm enough, they would run without clothes. And the other Algonquin tribespeople would deem that kind of strange, and they would laugh, giggle, whatever. But the Miami
They were also one of the few tribes in the area who also practiced face tattooing, which you can see in, like, as I'd already mentioned, like Chief Pecan. Like, he's a couple of the few portraits that we have of him, like, he practiced face tattooing. And it wasn't just the men either. The women practiced face tattooing as well. Also, an interesting thing that we had found was, I know that with a lot of First Nations people, like, having long hair is considered a thing to be prideful of. And it very much is. Like, I know that I wish I could grow long hair, but, amongst the First Nation people, having long hair was a very, prideful thing. except with the Miami people, they practically almost always shaved their heads, except for like one knot of hair off to about usually the left side, if I remember correctly. Like there was just one braid of hair that they kept off to the left side of their head. Otherwise, it was completely shaven amongst the men anyway.
And I don't remember what the practice for the women was.
I don't think I read anything regarding the practices of the women, apart from knowing that they also practice face tattooing. And amongst the women, the face tattoos typically tended to be under the lower lip and on the cheeks. So that was an interesting thing to learn, that, you know, because I don't know, like in growing up in like high school and middle school and everything, when we briefly learned about the Miami and whatever, we were never told anything about their practices. We never learned like tattooing, at least from like this standpoint. It always, from what we were taught in school, in public school and everything, it was always like a practice that happened in like the Pacific Ocean or something like that. It was never something as close to home.
Right. I mean, my high school, I don't think even mentioned the Miami people. I did grow up a bit further south than Fort Wayne, although I was born here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that wasn't, it wasn't a heavy focus, or probably even a focus at all that I can remember.
Yeah, and as far as their practices, like, as I had mentioned early on, it was very difficult to learn about their actual practices. But some of the things that were mentioned about them were the fact that one of the other local tribes of Native Americans were the Potawatomi, and it was said during that time that the Potawatomi practiced religion, whereas the Miami practiced magic. And so what that magic was, is it was kind of like a mix between animism and like the energy model, or like the energy model and the spirit model, where they believed that, yes, everything had a spirit, but everything also had an energy as well. And so that energy could be manipulated. It was up to like what's deemed as like the medicine person. But that was the job of them, to manipulate that energy for the good of the people around them. And like energy could be good or bad. But that good energy was used to manipulate things in order to help those around you and part of the tribe, whereas that bad energy was meant to be dispelled. So as far as like, one thing that I really like doing, though, is like mentioning the original words of things. And so the people who practice that magic, or the people who practice the medicine amongst the Miami people, were known as the Mitiwa. Though that was a medicine person, the Mitiwa.
Although, take into consideration, we may be butchering this,
yes,
and we are very, very sorry if we are butchering a language that is near and dear to you. We would love to be educated if you or someone you know is willing to teach us on pronunciations. So please reach out if that's a possibility. So Yara, how have we spent this last year working towards this practice and hoping to be as respectful to the Miamia as possible?
So how we've begun in this practice in the first place, like, first of all, we had mentioned it in the last episode. The first thing that I wanted to do, which is practiced in a lot of cultures, is like a baptism into the paradigm itself. So becoming, like, being birthed into that paradigm, becoming awoken, becoming baptized, like becoming a new person into the paradigm.
Like having a fresh slate.
Right, exactly. And so the first thing I did was I had devised a ritual in which that would happen. And I had a group of friends around a circle, and there was this big fire that was going, and I had ingested some entheogens and had baptized myself and like buried my old self in order to become born again by getting completely naked and just crawling hands and knees through the pine trees that are in the back of our land. Like there are these two lines of pine trees, and everything under it is all overgrowth and like pine needles and fungus and spider webs and all sorts of gross shit. But I had crawled hands and knees through that in order to signify that I was dead, and that like I was crawling like through the birth canal into a new world, into a new paradigm. And at the end of that tunnel was that big bonfire. And I climbed through it, and after I had climbed through it, then all of these drums were going and everything around this fire, and I sat down and meditated until I felt this presence, and I felt approached by what I could only describe as like the spirit of the land that had like opened up its arms to me and just said like, come, you do belong here. This is where like you're going to do good things with this. Like things are good. And like even now just describing this and going through like remembering all of these feelings and all of the things that I had witnessed and felt, like it was very powerful. It was a very powerful moment, and I felt that, yeah, good things are going to come out of this. Like it's just going to take a lot of work, and I felt as though I was born anew, and I felt as though like things are going to go very well. But it's also with that being reborn and everything that, you know, there was this long gap in our episodes, is because like we uprooted things. Like there was that whole uprooting and changing of what our schedule was, what our like identity was, what
our whole identity's definitely changed over the course of this last year. And I do think that the change into this paradigm has been a major part in that. Mm-hmm. So we're definitely looking forward to those changes. So what else have we done? We created an altar to the land, utilizing some wood from a beautiful giant oak that incidentally fell on the day that we signed the paperwork to our house. This tree was likely 250, 300-year-old red oak, 3.5 feet in diameter.
Yeah, it was a big-ass fucking tree.
It was a giant, like, we weren't here when it fell, but I would have...
It was the day we signed the fucking paperwork.
It really, literally was.
And it only barely missed our garage.
Yeah, it just barely missed the garage. So we took a giant section of that tree, like a cross section of it, yeah, and turned that into an altar to our land.
And we started like populating that altar with things that we'd find on the land, things that we found that basically like the land brought us. So like, for example,
a robin had dropped I think a giant wind had blown one of the robin's eggs out of its nest last spring, and I found that on the ground, and it was still intact, had a little tiny crack in it, and I was like, should I put it back in the nest? Is the mom going to be upset if I do that? So ultimately I decided it would be best to just put it over on our altar and give it to the land. And
mm-hmm. But then there was also like in the root system from the tree that fell over, I had found this pan. It was like a metal pan, this dish. And so like that is what became like our water offering bowl to the land, that we would draw up water from the well in order to pour her into that bowl that we would offer to the land anytime we went to go speak to it. There was a deer skull that we found that was weird as fucking hell. Like we found this deer skull amongst the pines, and it was just hanging there by a thread. And it was like...
by a string or something.
And it was just like one antler that was clearly chewed on by squirrels or something, that the other antler was missing, but it was just a skull. There were no other bones in the area.
Yeah, I don't know if the previous owners had found the skull and decided to hang it all spookily in the...
Who the fuck knows?
There's no knowing. Because they had this land for 40 plus years, and
mm-hmm. But yeah, so that ended up going there. Like anything that, you know,
we felt was
brought to us by the land,
right? And that we placed back to.
I mean, the only things that were kind of like artificially placed there were we had placed some green candles, some like green pillar candles that we would light whenever we spoke to the land.
Right, and we did a bit of a was it a Thanksgiving ritual to the land, like a just a giving of thanks for letting us have the opportunity to A, live here, and B, learn more about all of the creatures and plants, and
just basically thanking for everything, which we had adapted from. Like, this was mentioned in the book Braiding Sweetgrass. It was the Thanksgiving greeting from the Haudenosaunee, which are a group of First Nations people up around New York, including like the Mohawk, and if I remember correctly, like the Iroquois. But that was one thing from Braiding Sweetgrass, where it was like this big Thanksgiving thing, where you thank the land, you thank the grass, you thank the earth, you thank the sun, you thank the moon, you thank the water, you thank the fish, you thank the animals, you thank everything, and it really puts you in your place.
It did, and it was really interesting because as soon as we were like giving thanks to all of these beings that are surrounding us, a rabbit popped out of nowhere and just like hopped right next to us. It was almost stunning. Just how synchronous that was.
Yeah.
Like the rabbit was saying, "Hey, here I am. You called?
You're welcome." And then he just bounced his way around. Like, it wasn't frightened, just kind of like saying, "Hey, you're welcome. Peace." Yeah. And then he just wandered off.
It was really
yeah, like you said, synchronous. It was.
Yeah, synchronous.
But yeah, so we had been doing that, and like we've been trying to incorporate like that Thanksgiving, that bit of Thanksgiving anytime that we carry on with anything outside. Anytime that we do anything outside, whether it be gardening, whether it be like having people over for rituals here, we want to make sure that land is being thanked. Those things that we are working in and within are being thanked.
And the things that we are using from the land as well. Like, if we're using wood from the tree that fell, try to thank that. And
all of these things were given to us, and like they were given freely. And so like the best we can do as, the caretakers who came before us is to, again, like just take care of the land. Like, these things were given freely, so we should give back in the best way that we can. And that sense of Thanksgiving carries on to like other things that we've been doing, like just the fact like we've been doing like meditation out with the rising sun.
Right. Almost like kind of like a yoga, like stretches and yoga,
the sun salutation.
Yeah, sun salutation yoga. So we've been kind of incorporating other religious aspects into it as well, but I
don't know, like I feel pretty limber afterwards, so that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just generally a good thing, and it's so much powerful just doing it like right as the sun's coming up. When you're out there and you could like everything's silent, but you can still hear the life coming from the land around you.
Right, and you can hear everything waking up, and it's such a beautiful, invigorating kind of experience. And doing it in the cold is
it's a test. It's a test.
Yeah, it's a test. It's it will definitely wake you up.
Oh, yeah.
Very quickly.
It'll perk you right the fuck up.
You don't even need coffee that morning. We've been trying to do more and more like meditation among the trees. I would like to set up a few different like little meditation gardens in little different nooks and corners of the property.
And like I'd done it, and even just going out there, there was one time I remember distinctly. I went out to meditate near the pines, and I sat there, and I brought along this Bluetooth speaker, and I sat there for a while and just listening to this like meditative music, and I just heard, like, while I was sitting there meditating, there was just this overwhelming sound that I heard that was kind of discordant with what I was listening to, as if to tell me just like, shut that the fuck off and be here in this moment. Be here with what's around you. Be part of the land around you. You don't need this music. You need to be part of this. And so like I had just shut it off, and I sat there for a good long time just understanding like my place in this land and where I'm at. And like it was almost as if, like I said, I heard a voice just tell me like, shut that the fuck off. Like, this is more important. Like, you need to be here.
Right. It wasn't like you were being surrounded by silence either.
No.
It was like, because I remember you telling me, it was like as soon as you turned the music off, you realized that you were surrounded by all sorts of noises and you could hear everything around you just be alive.
Yeah, and it's that I should have been paying attention to.
Right. The life surrounding you rather than the calming music.
Yeah.
Which it has its place, like meditative music definitely, absolutely has its place. And if you don't have, a whole lot of nature surrounding you to listen to, like, that's definitely a great tool.
Right. But I mean, even then, like becoming part of the land, becoming part of what's around you, like it very much gets into the idea of the genius loci, which is the spirit of your surroundings. So like, even if you live in an urban environment, just like shut off whatever music, listen to what's around you, because that's the spirit of what's around you.
Right. That's how your surrounding is living as well. So what else have we been doing in this past year working towards this practice?
Well, we've also, along with doing the meditation and everything, we've also been focusing, and you especially have been focusing on, like local plants.
Right. We've been learning more about plants that are native to our area. And I joined the Indiana Native Plant Society Facebook page. I think that they have an actual club membership that you can join.
Yep.
It's a small fee, like small yearly fee. And then they have tons and tons and tons of people that post on there daily, like, hey, what's this plant? And then somebody else will be like a group expert, and they will, they'll answer the question, like, oh, that is common milkweed, or that's butterfly milkweed, or that's swamp milkweed, which I think there's like 11 different kinds of milkweed.
Yeah, there's a shitload of different milkweed.
Which it's great. That's wonderful. And, whichever one works best for your area is definitely great, because monarch butterflies, we learned at the Monarch Butterfly Festival that we went to last year, monarch butterflies only lay their eggs on milkweed. They will eat other plants, but they only lay their eggs on milkweed. So that's a very important plant in recovering our lost monarch population. I think from what I read, the monarch population had dropped like 90% over the last 20 years. And over the last couple of years, it's slowly starting to recover, but
it's taking time, because there's a lot of like people, or like milkweed. You would see a lot of milkweed growing along the sides of roads, but like people are using herbicides and killing it off, and so like the monarchs don't have anything to feed on.
Well, yeah, but even the issue of planting it, because you do see it planted alongside like highways and stuff, and that's great that that our local governments are saying, hey, we need to, try to fill these spaces that we've left empty.
But highways aren't exactly conducive to butterflies.
Yeah, highways are very, very dangerous to butterflies, because how many times have you hit a bug while you're flying 70 miles an hour down the road? Squash. Like, the poor little butterfly doesn't have a chance between cars and herbicides and birds and cruel little children who have the best intentions.
Do they, though?
Most children do. They just want to see the beautiful thing. They don't understand that capturing it kills it.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, butterflies, monarch butterflies especially, they have to travel back from, here in the Midwest all the way to Mexico. So that's like a 3,000-mile trip one way.
But yeah, and you've done a lot of work on our land trying to bring that back. So like we have one friend who you had asked for like milkweed seeds, milkweed pods, and so like I had gone over to her land and we just went, because she has a shitload of milkweed growing around, so we went and gathered pods during the autumn, and we've got intentions of planting them here soon.
Right. But before we plant those, we're going to have to Oh, there's a term for it. Basically, we're going to have to put them on some damp paper towels in the fridge. We didn't get them out before fall came, so the way milkweed seed pods or milkweed seeds work is they need to be actually outside in the winter for that outer shell of their seed to erode appropriately, and in order for the seed to actually germinate. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to get that started real soon before spring comes.
But we'd also planted some native trees in this area, including like the
black tupelo, also known as the black gum tree.
Yep.
And then we have the American chestnut. It's more of a bush, less of a tree, but that will help bring in more local native insects and native birds and give them homes, as well as just creating healthier soil. Healthier soil chemistry. Mm-hmm. And then there's other plants we've brought in that we've gotten from local native nurseries.
I know prairie smoke was one of them.
Yeah, there was a prairie smoke. There was butterfly milkweed. Mm-hmm. I've got a bunch of other seeds. We have to get those planted shortly, now that we hopefully don't have any more snow.
Right. But then speaking of birds, we've been doing a lot for that, because I know we had mentioned on the last episode about treating things holistically, bringing things back, and for a good long while there, like we had gone out and we bought a bunch of like bird feeders and everything and started feeding those, but then
like late last winter, early spring, we put out bird feeders, and then shortly, I think it was around May, there was this crazy thing going on. Lots of people were seeing their songbirds just show signs of nervous system damage, and the birds were just dying.
Wasn't one of the symptoms like they had like some crusty eye shit or something?
Yeah, there was like crustiness around the eye, neurological issues, and the birds were dying. And it was mostly like fledglings. And scientists couldn't figure out what was going on. I don't know if they actually figured out what the issue was or not.
I know you had a good idea.
I was wondering, and I don't know if this is just speculation or if like scientists have figured it out. But my hypothesis, at least early on, was we weren't seeing any of the brood X cicadas that were supposed to emerge last spring, summer. And I was wondering if the birds that were dying were birds that had eaten these cicadas who had absorbed so much herbicide over, the 17 years. Over the 17 years, that perhaps these...
Or if not the herbicide, like maybe there was a parasite or something in there. Or like something possibly having to do with brood X. I mean, it made sense.
A lot of areas said that they weren't seeing the amounts of cicadas from brood X that they were supposed to be seeing. Mm-hmm. And I know we didn't even hear cicadas until very, very late.
Yeah, but we got dead birds.
And so we followed the guidelines of our... local conservation officers.
Yeah, the DNR.
Yeah, the local DNR, and we removed our bird feeders, which made us really sad because that meant we didn't have nearly as many birds surrounding us because we don't have nearly as many native plants that the birds would have been feeding off of.
Right, and it wasn't until a couple months ago when they finally lifted that suggestion to take down bird feeders and everything, we put them back up, and then since then, as of right now, we finally have the kind of population of songbirds and birds that we had before
the whole thing happened.
Before all of that happened. We finally have that amount of birds back, which I'm looking forward to, because after those birds started becoming more and more sparse, I at least noticed that there were a lot more insects. There were a lot more spiders. I noticed quite a bit more. But yeah, we're hoping that, that same kind of thing doesn't happen, and that all of these birds are hanging out, especially since we've planted trees and we're planting more things to help them.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. And I really just enjoy watching the songbirds and just all the birds. They're fun. Mm-hmm. They have little personalities.
Yeah, they do.
So that's real fun. And all the other little critters.
Mm-hmm. Like that fucking squirrel that lives on our fucking walls.
Yeah. So that's been a thing that we've been dealing with over the course of the winter. There's a little squirrel that we live in an old farmhouse, and there's a squirrel that lives in the wall, and Yara's over here, Tom and Jerry crazy.
Fucking homicidal. Squirrelicidal.
Oh, you can't just kill the squirrel.
I'm gonna fucking murder it. I'm not just gonna kill it.
This goes against what we're practicing. It has a life and a soul.
Yeah, but it can also burn down our house.
It could burn down our house. It is potentially causing issues for us. So, as well as driving Yarmarud's
blood pressure to go through the fucking roof.
And mental state of being to become not well.
And on that note, I think we should take a quick break so that I can calm down a little bit. And we'll be back soon to finish up what we've been working on and what we're going to work on after this.
We are back from break. How else have we spent this last year working towards this practice? We've already spoken about reintroducing native plants back to our land, because as you may have already guessed, lots of them have been stripped from this land, and
for things like fucking hostas and shit.
Right. And the hostas have their place.
Not here. I hate them.
But yeah, they're not necessarily the best plants to have when you're working towards having a native ecosystem. So yeah, we've been working to reintroduce native plants to our little environment, as well as very slowly working to remove non-native / invasive plants placed here by previous generations.
Like the hostas.
Such as the hostas and the daffodils. And while they're very beautiful plants.
Those weird fucking, like, Jesus orchid things. Like the resurrection.
Oh, the resurrection orchids. Resurrection lilies, I think is what they're called.
Those aren't native, are they?
I don't believe so. If you don't know what I'm talking about, a resurrection lily, first you think there's nothing there, and then when the day's right, a whole stalk and a flower pops up out of nowhere. And I'm not even exaggerating. You will think there is nothing there, and it will be like
a day.
It will
two.
be like immediately, and there's a whole stalk and a flower. And they're pretty. They're like little light pink flowers on a really tall stem, kind of like a regular lily. But they're real interesting. And then
but I'm
peonies.
Pretty sure they're not native.
I don't know if they are. We'll need to double check on that. Peonies are not native, though they are the Indiana state flower. Yeah. There's a whole story behind that. We do have some native plants in our flower bed that were left here by the previous owner. We have the purple cone flowers.
Yep.
Are morning glories native?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about those. We did remove a barberry bush, which was a whole painful process.
God damn it.
It has these little barbs on the branches that are very, very, very sharp, pointy, painful. We've been working to remove a rose bush that it is extremely.
It won't die.
It is extremely aggressive, but yeah, it's a slow process. It's not like we're just gonna cut down all the non-native trees, because then we would have almost no trees. But
we're slowly introducing, like we'd already mentioned, like the chestnut, which is more of a bush, but then like the black tupelo and
we do have some native trees. We have
like the catalpa.
Catalpa is almost, we are just barely in the region that it's native. Like it's almost. They're very, very, very rare in our area.
Yeah.
But they are native to very close to here.
But I mean,
we do have many oaks. We've got white oaks, black oaks, chinkapin oaks. I probably butchered that. We had a red oak. I don't know if I've seen any more red oaks on the property.
Well, I mean, speaking of rarity, though, like when we were doing yard work last year, we had uplifted a log and found a blue-spotted salamander.
Oh, yeah. Doing yard work, we found a blue-spotted salamander, and those generally are found
around the Great Lakes. And even according to, like, the Purdue University website, they really don't come down this far south. But we found one just chilling out under a log.
The furthest south one has been found, I think, was Portland, Indiana, which is a little bit south of where we are. But they're very rare in our area. And so we happened to find one. So that was pretty interesting. And they're beautiful. They're almost, it's a salamander.
Yeah.
And so they're almost all black, and they've got these little light blue spots all over them, and they're just real pretty.
Guy.
Yeah. Well, they're girls.
Well, okay, a little pretty girl.
Yeah, they're girls. Because I think the way they reproduce is they reproduce with a male salamander of a different species, and they maintain their genetics.
Yeah,
they have a really interesting genetic composition and sexual reproduction.
Hormeogenesis or something. I don't remember the exact term, but yeah, it's super interesting. Yeah. Anyway, we've been trying to reintroduce like local things and getting rid of the non-native ones. But then also
we're taking care of the native plants that already do exist here, and you're just trying to help those thrive in their best possible way that we can help them.
Right, and even as far as like helping like local insects and things like that, we don't mow our yard very often.
No, mostly only if we know somebody's gonna, like, if we're having a gathering.
Yeah.
And we might not even mow the whole yard, just enough that people can get to the backyard and we can all hang out without too much of a worry about ticks. Like having the birds help with the ticks.
And then we also have a local possum who's dumb as hell, but
we do. We have a little fat possum. Unfortunately, he has
traumatic brain injury, probably.
he accidentally met the end of Yara boot as Yara was walking out the door one day.
Yeah, okay, because like so we have a bucket like right outside our front door that we use to keep compost in. Like I keep this there, and like I opened up the door, and like I'm just opening the door, like not expecting anything to be there, and I fucking hoofed this possum in the fucking head. Because he was trying to get into the compost bucket, and I felt really bad for him, but he just toddled off. Like, he didn't seem too bothered whatsoever.
And that was our second encounter with the possum.
Yeah, because I had set a trap for that fucking squirrel.
Which we're going to stay calm about.
Sorry. I had set a trap for that squirrel, and then it didn't catch the squirrel. It caught that fat possum. And like,
I don't know how the possum even fit in there.
I don't know how it fit into that trap, but it did.
It was just barely big enough.
And so like I had to pick it and shake it up, or like shake it out of the trap, and the poor bastard landed on his head.
The poor little possum.
I feel bad for him.
But so yeah, possums are great to help with like tick population and
along with the birds
insects
that we've been bringing back.
So yeah, we've been trying to help with the native animals of our area, and we did get a bird box, or not a bird box, a bat box.
Yes.
A bat house. We haven't placed it yet. We got to find the perfect place to place it.
Which I'm thinking over near where the garage is, like along those like Douglas trees or whatever they are.
Yeah, that might work.
But we also have. Did we get an owl house?
No, we do not have an owl house yet. It's one thing we've considered. We have another local Indiana company that makes and sells wild animal
habitats.
Not necessarily habitats, but
enclosure things. They
sell like bird houses, bird feeders, and
bat boxes,
squirrel houses, all the different kinds of things you could put in your yard or on your property to help maintain wild animals.
But they've got owl houses, and I've been thinking of getting one of those because I know we have screech owls in the area. I've heard the eastern screech owl off in the distance. Like, I know what that sounds like, and I've heard a couple of them, so like they're in the area.
I've not seen one here, but I have seen one while I was driving down the road.
Right. They're pretty they are local.
Right.
And so like if we could have one that would also like help take care of, as we're approaching things holistically, that would also take care of the like field mice that we have that are in our garage.
Right. And so do the peregrine falcons we have.
Yes.
Which those are pretty cool to watch them barrel roll.
But we have to decide whether or not we want like a falcon to live here or whether we want an owl to live here, because two predatory birds, two raptors are not going to live together.
Yeah, not likely going to live near each other. What else have we been doing? We've been looking into reintroducing local native mosses, but relocating mosses can be super difficult. Especially after reading the Gathering Moss book by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It can be difficult to do. There are ways to help facilitate moss growth of a specific variety of moss, but mosses are very important to our ecosystems, and they're often one of the most overlooked plants. Like, people see these flowers and they're like, oh yeah, let's plant all the beautiful flowers, and that's great. I am very happy that you want to, bring back milkweed, for example. It does have a very important part of our native ecosystem, but just the pretty flowers and pretty plants, like, they're not the only helpful.
Like even the prairie smoke, that's a pretty small plant, and it's pretty easy to overlook. It's just a small little kind of flowering bush thing.
There are almost succulents that do exist in our native ecosystems.
But because they're so small and everything, they're very easily overlooked, kind of like how you're talking about the moss.
Right. Yeah, well, moss is
very overlooked.
Is very overlooked. Mosses and lichens, they're very overlooked. But they often can thrive in some of the most interesting locations. Mm-hmm. They're real interesting to learn about. So that's one thing we've been looking into. Things we've done this last year.
We've also been, as we had mentioned in the last episode, trying to work on community and working with local people and working with, building that community again and building a group of people to work together. And so we've been inviting people over here as often as we can, not only just people who practice magic, but any of our friends, in order to build a community. And sometimes we've had both magical people and just friends come and hang out, and so they become part of the land. We create our own stories here. We start helping build this community. Right,
as responsibly as possible.
Right.
I mean, we're still trying to maintain the social distance and keep our community safe. Unfortunately, this coronavirus is still ongoing. Thankfully, numbers are going down. With this current variant, the Omicron variant, the virus is extremely, extremely contagious, but thankfully less severe than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, and we've been vaccinated. We make sure anybody who has ever come here has been vaccinated.
And, we wear masks when we have to, and try to socially distance as much as possible with maintaining that community. So, it's frustrating and sad, but, we
do what we can.
We still try to do what we can to protect that community, because there's no point in having community if you're, if your community is gone, desolated in a short amount of time.
Right.
So.
But then, we've also been, trying to incorporate that aspect of homesteading by growing our own garden. And we've even incorporated aspects of community with that garden.
Right. So we had this had this decent sized garden last year, and
lots of fucking gourds.
Yeah, we had lots of
tomatoes,
lots
too.
of squash, lots of tomatoes, lots of peppers, and there were so many tomatoes, and they came at a time where I just wasn't quite able to can them, and they went bad. Like, they started to get squishy real fast, and I had remembered our neighbor down the road who I get chicken eggs from saying that her chickens love tomatoes, and if we ever have scraps to just bring them over. And so I called her up and I was like, hey, I got a whole bunch of like real squishy tomatoes. You think your chickens want them? And she's like, oh yes. So I brought over a bunch of tomatoes, and they weren't rotten, just squishy. Squishy tomatoes, and then I had a whole bunch of
some squash.
Yeah, some squash that I cut up, and then I had this beautiful little cantaloupe that I was just waiting for it to become just perfectly big enough. Right when it got big enough, I went to pick it, and I grabbed the backside and squish.
Oh no.
A rabbit had bitten into it.
That
had eaten like a third of it. So I took that over, and that happened, I think, a couple of times too. I think we had a butternut squash that also happened to.
I think with one of the acorn squashes too.
Yeah, so we managed to take those over and, take those vegetables, fruits and vegetables over. Tomatoes are technically a fruit.
Close enough.
Anyway, took those over, and our neighbor gave us like a whole pack of eggs for free. So it was nice, like having that almost bartering system, reciprocity. We gave to them, they gave back. We fed the chickens fed us.
Right. But then we also had people come like help us prepare for winter as well. We have a grapevine, which isn't exactly native. I know we have. There are wild grapes that do grow in this area, but I don't know if they're native.
I don't know if this variety of grapes is necessarily native to our area, but yeah.
Right. We had one of our friends come trim that up for us. There were other friends who helped come help split wood, who helped trim back bushes, helped us transplant some walnut trees to areas that wouldn't fuck our foundation.
Right, because our walnut tree that we have remaining is A, right along the front of the house, and B, right along the power lines. So the power company likes to come and trim it up every year or two, and the poor tree has branches.
Better days.
It only has branches on the side opposite the power lines, which is so sad for this beautiful tree.
But just transplanting some of the couple of year-old walnut trees.
Right, the ones that grew in the flower bed that
are right
moved.
next to the house.
Yeah, needed moved right away.
But yeah, so we had people help with us. And so with them helping with us on the land, they became part of it too. And we had given that sort of reciprocity saying yeah, you've helped with this land at any point. If you want to come over, you can. You've helped with this. You've helped cultivate this land. This land is yours too.
Well, they actually all volunteered because they had all been here to partake of this land in some way or another, whether that be for a bonfire or doing rituals with us or whatnot. So and after talking about what we're doing with Administrism, they were the ones that introduced this and were like, hey, we want to help.
Right.
So it was really nice to have that community come help give back to our land and maintain it, because sometimes it does need a little bit of work to help make sure we're not getting an overgrowth of these invasive species or make it be ready for the different seasons.
Yep.
We have to give back to receive.
Yeah.
So
definitely, because everything this land has given us, it's given freely, and so we need to provide for that land in the same way that it's provided for us, and will continue to provide for us.
Right. So we were very thankful that they offered and they were willing to, help do that.
And then as far as our practices go, magical practices and everything, and how we ingrain ourselves with the land, one thing that we had been doing, taken from one of the books, which was wisdom sits in places. With wisdom sits in places, one thing that was common amongst the Apache, and it was common with the Miami as well, and many other like Native Americans, is just providing things with names. And giving things names gives it that spirit. It gives it that energy that the Miami used. Like, by having a name, it gives it something. And so we've been trying to do that as well. Like, walking around our property, walking around this land, and providing names to things. And by giving it that name, it gives it verification. It gives it validation. Like, I see you. I see you and I understand you, and you are something, and you have this energy, you have this spirit. And so by doing so, so there are places where I can just give a name and Zarina knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, like for example, one of the areas that we have is there's a very, very old mulberry tree in the back corner of our property. And we just call it the old mulberry tree. It is the only one. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, and there have been other like little mulberry bushes that have grown around, but that's the mulberry tree.
Right, the mulberry tree. Mm-hmm. Or like our red oak.
Yeah.
If he would have stayed, he would have been like the grandfather oak.
Yeah, but no, it's just, it's our altar. And so like we have these names for things with the mulberry. We can just speak to the mulberry tree. Right.
So it's nice to be able to have those names and know those locations, as well as be able to respect that being, and
right.
the
and
spirit of
life
that,
and yeah,
the spirit and life of that living being as well. So,
right,
multitude of positives from that.
So yeah, that's what we've been doing with our practice, along with keeping like with the foundations and everything. And every time we have a ritual or do anything, like it involves drumming, it involves a fire. We've had plenty of fucking fires.
Outside.
Yes, outside.
That's where we want the fires.
Yeah,
please
I know.
Be safe with your fires.
Yeah, rules. Too many goddamn rules. Keeping fires outside.
I mean, a candle is an okay inside fire. A fire in the fireplace is an okay inside fire. Let's just have safe fires.
You're pretty picky. You're so picky.
I prefer not Pyrex bowl fires in my living room.
Prefer.
By prefer, I mean require.
Oh, God damn
it. Anywho, okay. Thank you for listening. We really have appreciated
all the support.
Yeah, all the support that you guys have offered.
And the patience for waiting through this long episode reveal.
Yes, absolutely.
We honestly do hope to start releasing episodes with more frequency. Especially like we had mentioned at the beginning, how things have calmed down, how, we're getting into the swing of things and can start discussing what we're doing more often.
Yeah, let's hope that there's not a whole lot more uprooting.
Right. Apart from us, like, uprooting things
that
like non-native plants. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to keep focusing on indigenous practices. Like this last year, we had been focusing on the Miamia. I'm hoping with the next paradigm, because it's very, very much land intrinsic and focused on land, and your place with the land is focusing on like Aboriginal Dreamtime practices.
Not paradigm, but the next location that we choose to speak about.
Right. Just focusing on that idea of one's intimate relationship with the land and how one sees oneself as being part of the land, because it is very much intertwined within that culture. And so there are many different cultures in it, but like one thing that is pervasive throughout it is one individual's relationship with the land, which is where you get things like song lines. But I'll talk about that, and we will talk about that come the next episode, which hopefully will be relatively soon.
Right. And once again, if you or someone you know speaks Miamia or knows more about the Miamia culture, or even any of the Algonquin tribes cultures, you are more than welcome to reach out to us. If you would like to share more information, we would love to share that as well, or just learn more as well. So thank you so much.
And sorry for butchering any of the Miami pronunciation. Yeah,
we're very sorry. We try. It's not always...
not a native speaker at all.
Not a native speaker, and it's definitely a ride.
Yep.
So thank you so much, and we look forward to the next episode.
Hell yeah. Thank you.
All right. Peace out.
Bye.